Now I'm going to talk about fragrances and what's in all these ingredients in things like essential oil. What they have in common is alcohol, right? Essential oil, flower essence, fragrances. All these three, right? They have components of alcohol, right? That's ethanol, right? This chemical, right, is not natural to our body. All right, if there is in the process of producing these ingredients or these so-called inventions, all right, they are making use of machines which is using direct motor, right, DC frequencies. This is going to create sound frequencies, right? uh, this is called direct current, right? This direct current frequency is going to have those kinds of sound frequency in these ingredients, right? Whether it's a flower essence, essential oil, or fragrances, right? Perfumes, all right, perfumes and colognes, right? In the bottle, you may not be able to hear, but energetically, there are sound frequencies inside them, right? Especially those um, fragrances with musk, okay, musk, right? So these frequencies can stay on your skin. If you don't clear them, all right, these can be hurt in your body, right? It can change your body DNA or construct, right? So they can be influenced by wireless networks, EMFs, heart frequencies, right? So it's important for us to know what these can do to our body, right, in order for us to maintain our body forms, right? So this is why we try to eliminate all these kinds of chemicals and poisons, right? We don't need to have all these kind of fragrances. Why our body smell is because of sodium, lithium, right? The poison in the environment, right? Sodium is not just in the food, it's also in the sea, right? In the oceans, is in the sky, right? Sometimes when they evaporate, right? When if it is not in its purest form, right? This sodium can be in the clouds, right? So this is why we need to have a separation of these elements in its purest form. But if let's say there's oil, it can cause mutations of the elements that can uh, sort of mix the separation process. That means the filtration is not enough. The separation of the elements is not enough. It causes mutation in the etheric plane. This can be a kind of spells that is, changing the chemical bondage or compositions and create all the different kinds of chemical bonding between all the different elements, right? Those that you find in elemental tables. So this is why when those factories that they produce certain things, right, certain chemicals, whatever that is going through the chimneys in the air, right, that evaporates, right, that forms those kinds of clouds. Why it's hard to clear, right? There's a lot of mutations, viruses that they did not know clear. So they actually have to be responsible to clean up or aware of what they are creating. Right? The more of these kind of funny chemicals that they create, it's going to disrupt the earth. All these different types of chemical, sometimes they are not so suitable to bond together. It forms certain funny chemicals that's toxic, and so they form clouds that's becoming toxic, right? What you call chemtrails or chemical clouds or geoengineering. These are created by all these kinds of industrial factories that they don't know what is causing all these chemicals to come, how they derive at all this formula they think it's some spiritual download or what, or they think that it's some kind of invention or naturally occurring, or they want to recycle or whatever notions, right? This can create environmental disruptions, right, that is causing earth to be imbalanced. So this is why they need to be aware of all this kind of chemical components. Some of these people in the labs, they are so not very um, aware of their inventions. Sometimes they just anyhow create, right, to test or to experiment, and end up they cause, right, a lot of disruptions that they may not even know how to stop, or they are overcome by greed, because some of these toxics can get into their body to make them poisoned, to the extent that they become greedy, right, lustful, easily tempted, that sort of thing. These are poisons, physical poison that goes to the etheric body to make them energetically, or poison even at their conscious level, that their consciousness is really like sleeping, lost, spelled, unable to function. Also, this is that level of poison that we are talking about. So this is why we need to get ourselves educated with these kinds of like chemicals that we see. We buy, things, we think that, oh, it's good for us, or we feel good, right? But actually it's poisoned.